And we are live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the bigger picture. Oh well, we do have a live virtual studio audience, but they've all muted themselves as usual. Welcome to another mini series. This time we are going to be taking a look at Parshat Toldot. So get yourselves comfortable. Get yourselves a drink, get yourselves a l'chaim, get yourselves a biscuit, whatever it's going to be, and let's get underway because this one, it's just too good to be true. But it is true. Don't worry, Lawrence. It is true. So let's let's take a look at week 1 of our mini series on Parshat Toldot, the final selection. So we have to appreciate where we are right now. Right, we've done Bereshit, Noah, Lech Lecha, Vayera, Chaye, Sarah. Right, and we've still got Toldot, Vayetze, Vayishlach, Vayeshev, Miketz, Vayigash, Vayechi. Still got 7 left to go. So we're in the 6th parasha of 12. So we're kind of like in the middle section right now of Bereshit. And there's an amazing pattern that really ties in to what everything we've been talking about throughout this whole series, this macro series on Sefer Bereshis, right? The parasha opens, and I know you've all done your preparation work, and you've all taken a look at the text beforehand, so you're all going to be able to answer my questions tonight. But let's take a look at the opening verse of this particular parasha, Parashat Toldot. Ve'ele Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham. Avraham holidet Yitzchak. These are the offspring, the Toldot of Yitzchak, the son of Avraham. And it then goes on to say, Avraham begot. What a great word. He gave, he didn't give birth necessarily, but he had Yitzchak. Yitzchak came from him. So this pasuk comes in contrast to a very similar pasuk, very nearby to the one that we start off with in Parashat Toldot. Where else have we seen Ve'ele Toldot? Now, you don't need to go too far back. So if you've got a Tanakh in front of you, where do we see Eile Toldot in close proximity? Well, these are the generations. Thank you, Lawrence, and thank you. I'm not sure who else said it. I think it might have been David. So if you jump up one paragraph earlier, you get to chapter 25, verse 12. Same chapter, right? In the what is it? The King James breakdown of chapters. A few lines earlier, Ve'ele Toldot Yishmael ben Avraham, right? So we've had Yitzchak ben Avraham a few lines later, and first in verse 12, Ve'ele Toldot Yishmael ben Avraham, Asher Yalda Hagar HaMitzrit, Shifchat Sarah LaAvraham. These are the descendants of Yishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, who was Sarah's maidservant, bore to Avraham. So that was the opening of the previous paragraph. So we need to understand how we are comparing and how we are contrasting these paragraphs. This is important to understand because if every parsha, as we have said, is a unique unit, Bereshit, Noach, Lech Lecha, Vayera, Chaye, Sarah, Toldot. So we're calling the parsha Toldot. The name of the parsha permeates throughout the whole parsha. Then we have to wonder about Toldot here, a few lines earlier, and Toldot at the beginning of the actual Parshat Toldot. Why, in other words, why does Parshat Toldot start with the Toldot of Yitzchak when a few lines earlier you have the Toldot of Yishmael? And that wasn't the beginning of the Parsha. Right? On a simple level, what does Toldot mean? Anybody? What does Toldot mean? Descendants. Very good. Right? So if we have a look at our verse, Ve'ele Toldot Yishmael, These are the descendants of Yishmael. And what's the very next thing that comes in those subsequent verses? These are the names of the sons of Yishmael. Nivayot, Kedar, Adbeel, Umivsam, Umishma, Veduma, Umasa, Hadad, Vetema, Yatun, Nafish, Vakema. These are all of the sons, the actual descendants of Yishmael. Right? So the Toldot of Yishmael, as the Torah presents it, is exactly that. It is his offspring. So that is definitely one layer of what. Look at that. We've got Leah and we've got Sarah into the shir already. So that's one layer, Layer, of what a Toldot is. But where else have we seen Toldot? That's going to help us understand a deeper meaning to what Toldot means. Where else have we seen Toldot? Go on, Lawrence, because I think someone said it before, if it wasn't you.
Yeah, no, I think we saw it in Noah.
We did. Let's have a look at source number 3, chapter 6, verse 9, the beginning of Parshat Toldot, of Noach. Ele Toldot Noach. These are the Toldot of Noach. Noach ish tzaddik tamim haya b'doratav et ha'elohim hitalech Noach. Noach was a righteous man, perfect in his generations, and Noach walked with God. What's the next verse that comes after that? The 3 sons of Noach. Noach had 3 sons, Shem, Cham, and Yafet. So it's interesting. It will mention his sons, but in the initial verse over here, Ele Toldot Noach, these are the Toldot of Noach, it doesn't mention the sons. It tells us that Noach was a tzaddik and that he walked with God. So what does Toldot mean? It doesn't only mean offspring. It doesn't only mean offspring. If we take a look at our next source, source number 4, Rashi, on that very verse, explaining to us what Toldot means, he says, Davar acher, another explanation, Limedcha she'ikar toldotehem shel tzadikim masim tovim. When it says, Eile Toldot Noach, and then it goes on to talk about how he was a righteous man, there's a very particular reason, because Toldot doesn't just mean physical offspring, physical descendants. Says Rashi.
Sorry, Rabbi. Sorry, should the sources be coming up? Because I'm not seeing anything.
No, I've just sent you a message that I can't see anything.
Oh my goodness gracious me.
But I can't see anything else.
Oh my goodness gracious me. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I've got baby brain.
That's it.
Got baby brain. Oh my gosh. All right. Thank you very much. Let's take a look at these again then. Oh dearie me. Let's backtrack then and just cycle through that a little bit. Thank you. Oh my gosh, how did I forget that? Okay, so we started at the beginning of Parshat Toldot. Eile Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham. Avraham holidet Yitzchak. These are the Toldot of Yitzchak. Avraham begats Yitzchak. Okay, we asked, where else have we seen this kind of verse? And a few verses earlier, we had the Toldot of Yishmael. The Toldot of Yishmael, which tells us the actual descendants. That's what that paragraph does. It gives us the descendants of Yishmael. So we asked the question, what does Toldot mean? And we said on a simple level, Toldot means the descendants, because that's what we're taught about Yishmael. And it's one layer, and it's a very common understanding. But we then have to see what else Toldot can tell us. And for that, we had to look at this verse. Eile Toldot Noach. Noach ish tzaddik tamim haya b'dorotav. The Toldot of Noach were the fact that he is a tzaddik. It mentions his sons, but it also goes out of the way to tell us that he was a tzaddik. And Rashi picks up on this. And Rashi says that the fact that the first thing that the Torah mentions after telling us that it's going to introduce us to his Toldot, it doesn't introduce us to his sons, it introduces us to the fact that he's a tzaddik, because the offspring of a person, right, the real offspring of a person are your good deeds. The main Toldot of righteous people are their good deeds in this world. And if that's the case, then we have to ask ourselves, what is the broader definition of Toldot? So, what is the broad... Kathy, you have a question?
I don't know if it's just me, but it's very blurred.
No, I can't do much better than what I've got. If we...
I don't know everyone else, but it's very blurred.
Yeah, it's very blurred.
Oh, I can't win tonight, can I?
I'm sorry.
Should have gone to Specsavers.
That's very blurred. That's less blurred. But I can't do any better than that.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry for that. Oh, I can see now on the screen as well. I have no idea why that's the case.
Oh, it was better then. Oh, that's it.
Okay, let's make do with what...
It's better now.
Fantastic. Goodness me. Anyone watching this on YouTube, I just profoundly apologize. But let's move on. So we need a broader definition, guys, for Toldot. And what is our broader definition of Toldot? Our broader definition is that the Toldot, the offspring of people, are the things that a person leaves behind. It is the imprint that we leave in this world. It is our contribution to history. So that can be in a physical sense with our offspring, but it can also be a person's mitzvot, a person's good deeds. Even if they don't have children in this physical lifetime, a person is still able to create Toldot. And that is what we are trying to contrast when we have the Toldot of Yishmael and the Toldot of Yitzchak. And that is the reason why Parshat Toldot is going to start with the Toldot of Yitzchak, even though just a few verses earlier we had the Toldot of Yishmael. We are seeing what they both left behind. We are seeing the imprint that they made on history. For Yishmael, it was just the descendants. That's all the Torah mentions as the Toldot of Yishmael. But for Yitzchak, there are other things too. His impact and his imprint on the world goes a lot further. There's a lot of content. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of interactions. There's a lot of struggles. And that all goes into the Toldot of Yitzchak, right? So if we can understand that the Toldot of the Tzaddikim, the Toldot of Yitzchak, and the other righteous people are their actions, the things that they leave as an imprint, then we can start to see the pieces pulling together in the entire book of Bereshit. We can start to look backwards and we can start to look forwards and understand the totality of Sefer Bereshit. Okay, so in the beginning of Parashat Toldot, right, the beginning of all of the Toldot of Yitzchak, this is the introductory verse of his imprint and his impact on the world. So then what we need to do is, if we want to see how far that reaches, the Toldot of Yitzchak, we need to find the next Eile Toldot. Because if we then understand that this is opening the chapter of the Toldot of Yitzchak, that means at some point there will be another Eile Toldot, which will close the Toldot of Yitzchak and will open the Toldot of somebody else. So where do we next see another Toldot? That's the question. So you're going to have to flip quite a few pages and not spoil the surprise. Because would the word legacy be, it's definitely a good word. Yeah, why not? That's a great word to be able to use. Yeah, because then it's not just the people, the individuals that you leave behind, but the imprint and the consequences of your actions that you've done in this world. So legacy, I think, is probably a very good word. Source number 5, Art Scroll gives a different translation already. Right, chapter 37, verse 2, Eile Toldot Yaakov. These are the chronicles, as Art Scroll translates it. These are the chronicles of Yaakov. Yosef ben Sheva Esrei Shana haya ro'eh et echav bat son. That at the age of 17 years, Yosef was a shepherd with his brothers by the flock. He was a youth with the sons of Bilhan, the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and Yosef would bring evil reports about them to their father. So these are the Toldot of Yaakov, and the Toldot of Yitzchak, therefore, take us all the way to the Toldot of Yaakov. Now, that's not in Parshat Toldot, and it's not in Parshat Vayetze, and it's not in Parshat Vayishlach. It's actually at the beginning of, not the beginning, it's actually in, oh yes it is, it's in the beginning of Parshat Vayeshev. So we're going several chapters, and we're going several Parshiot into the future before we get to Eile Toldot Yaakov. That's how far we go with the Toldot of Yitzchak. So we go through the whole of the story of Abraham, we go into the story of Yitzchak, and that wraps up and we get to the Toldot of Yaakov. Now, I was a little bit tricky with you guys, because this isn't actually the next time we see Eile Toldot. Where is the real Eile Toldot that we see next? You have to jump back one chapter, back into Parashat Vayishlach, because at the end of Parashat Vayishlach, you actually see Eile Toldot Esav, who Edom, chapter 36, verse 1. So I told you that the Toldot of Yitzchak go all the way through to the Toldot of Yaakov. I was a little bit cheeky over there. And actually, you get to Eile Toldot Esav before you get to Eile Toldot Yaakov. But what's important to notice is that when we are introduced to the Toldot of Esav, what does that chapter actually tell us? It tells us the actual descendants, the actual physical offspring of Esav. And chapter 36 is a listing of all of the descendants of Esav, his physical descendants. Okay, so we see a little pattern emerging, don't we, guys? We see the Toldot of Yishmael mentioned very briefly, and that closes the chapter of Yishmael, and it opens the chapter, the Toldot of Yitzchak. That continues until the Toldot of Yitzchak closes, and then it briefly opens the Toldot of Esav, only to close that stage of history, and we start a new parasha, Parashat Vayeshev, with the Toldot of Yaakov. So the Parshiot are divided up in such a way. Parshat Toldot is the legacy, as Kathy beautifully put it, the legacy of Yitzchak, right? And ignores the Toldot of Yishmael just a few lines earlier. Parshat Vayeshev starts with the Toldot of Yaakov and ignores the Toldot of Esav, which belongs in the previous parasha, not in Parshat Vayeshev. So what we're seeing is, we're seeing the physical descendants, Abraham, Yitzchak and Yishmael, Yaakov and Esav. We're seeing in front of our very eyes the selecting away, the way in which history flows with regards to the lineage of the Jewish people. We close one chapter of history, we open a new chapter of history. We select away, as we've talked about in the past, we select away the members of that lineage of the Jewish people, and everybody else gets cast to the side, so to speak. We start to see the deeper, broader, more complex stories that impact on the history of the world. And the ones who continue the story are Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So where then do the Toldot of Yaakov take us to?
Well, eventually it'll take us into Egypt.
Eventually, that's exactly the answer I was looking for. It takes us to the end of the book of Bereshit. It takes us to the end of Sefer Bereshit, right? So this helps us frame the book of Bereshit in a way that we haven't seen before. It gives it the very clear structure that we've been starting to build on for all of these weeks and months and all these different... This is the 16th session that we're having together, guys, right? Everything that we've been building to, it's starting to fall into place. right? It's a very clear structure to this process of selection, which we have constantly returned to. Yeah, right after. Right after we left Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, we listed 10 generations until we found Noach. And then we had Shem and Cham and Yafet, his 3 sons, and we sifted through 10 generations until we found Avraham. And then we find Avraham, who was this individual who will produce the 71st nation, as we've discussed in the past. And we found that pearl, right? We've sifted through the dirt until we found the pearl. And now we're removing the impurities from that pearl. So we selected away Yishmael, and we got to the story of Yitzchak. Then we sift away Esav, and we get to the Toldot of Yaakov. And after we select Yaakov, so then we don't separate anymore. We then have 12 tribes, which brings us to the end of Bereshit. It brings us to the end of the story of the foundation of our people, right? Yaakov gets renamed Yisrael, and then as we enter into the book of Shemot, we have the story of Bnei Yisrael, and that starts in Shemot. So now that we can understand how Toldot fits into the structure, let's have a look at the overview of the parasha, which normally we do right at the beginning. But we would have been doing ourselves an injustice if we had done this at the beginning. So now that we understand the function of these Toldot, now that we understand the selecting away of the lineage of the Jewish people, leading us to the finale and the end of the book of Bereshit, which leads us in as a nation, as a people, into the book of Shemot, what happens then in this week's parasha? So let's take a look at that together, guys. The structure of Parashat Toldot, the way that we always do it. How do we divide up the paragraphs? What are the themes that arise in Parashat Toldot? What do we think? Don't all rush at once. Lawrence, you're going to need to unmute.
The birth of the twins.
The birth of the twins. Who are the twins? Esav and Yaakov. Very good. So we have the birth of Yaakov and Esav at the beginning of Parashat Toldot. Excellent. And what happens with them? Very good. So the first theme, as it were, the first chunk of Parashat Toldot is the birth of Yaakov and Esav and the struggle over the Bechorah, the struggle over the right of the firstborn. What's the next topic? It's not the blessing.
Actually, there's a famine that comes next.
Oh, there's a famine that comes next. And as a result of that famine, Yitzchak has an encounter with
Pharaoh.
Not Pharaoh. Avimelech. We've met him before. This is Avimelech part 2. Right? He encounters Avimelech, and we've seen Avimelech before because Abraham encountered Avimelech. Abraham had a replay of the same situation that we have dealt with previously. There's a whole thing with his wife. There's a whole thing with the wells. So that all seems to replay very much as we saw already with Abraham. And the third paragraph, the third section of Parashat Toldot, which someone mentioned before, I think it was Stella, was another struggle with Yaakov and Esav, but this time it's over the bracha. So this is interesting, guys. It's all very interesting. But what I want us to start to realize is that in Parashat Toldot, when you see the struggle of Yaakov and Esav, there's very much an interesting thing that starts to emerge. There are two struggles between Yaakov and Esav in Parashat Toldot. There's the struggle over the Bechorah, and there is the struggle over the Baracha. Now, what do you notice when you look at these words? David, you are muted.
Anagrams.
Anagrams. Another way of saying that they're anagrams is that they share the same Hebrew letters. Now, that is significant in Hebrew. It's not always significant in English, but it is significant in Hebrew. Now, this isn't some bigger picture version of Wordle, but it is critical for us to be able to understand what is going on. There is a relationship. The fact that they share the same letters, Bechorah and Beracha, the fact that they share the same letters is significant. The fact that Yaakov and Esav are fighting over these two, call them concepts for now, is significant. How do we know they are significant? Because Esav himself tells us they are significant. Chapter 27, verse 36, when Esav realizes that Yaakov has taken both of these things, he says, Vayomer hachi kara shemo Yaakov, vayakvenu zeh pa'amayim. Is it because his name was called Yaakov that he has outwitted me these two times? Et bechorati lakach. He has taken away my birthright. V'hinei ata lakach birchati. And now he's taken away my blessing as well. Vayomer halo atzalta li bracha. And then he asks Yitzchak, have you not reserved a blessing for me? So Esav realizes the connection between both of these things. And we need to understand a little bit about what the significance of this is. And you see, when Hebrew expresses a word, when you have a word in Hebrew, it expresses the essence of a thing. When Hebrew combines letters, they act as building blocks for the roots of letters. So if they share letters at the same root, they share the same foundational building blocks, even if they are in a different order. So the fact that you see in those letters a bet, a chaf, and a resh, right, which in one scrambling spells the bracha, and in another spelling spells bechorah. So even though they are in a different order, even though they are translated in different ways, they are sharing a foundational building block. Let's take another example of what I'm trying to say over here. Okay? So in Hebrew, a father is an av, right? So if we were to get Rabbi Tatsi over here for a minute, so then we would observe the following thing. The letter Aleph, the first letter of the Aleph Bet, will always denote beginning, the origin being the first, being the only, right? And the letter Bet, which is the second letter of the Aleph Bet, will always denote being second, being the result of a source, bringing about multiplicity, being more than it was before. So you can have a word like Av, which means a father. A father is someone who brings about multiplicity by having children. You only become a father by having children. So the Hebrew word that codes what a father is are these two letters, Aleph and Bet. You stick them together, and the essence that you're trying to convey is that a father has the ability to create multiplicity. He is able to create something from the one and turn it into more than one. Is that making sense? Right? That's the function of an Av. A father is only a father if he has children, right? He is only a father if he has a multiplicity about him, if he has created multiplicity, if something more has come from his source, something more than before, right? So the Aleph, which denotes being first, and the Bet, which denotes multiplicity and something coming from the origin, something coming from the source, being more than it was before, the code of Hebrew puts those two letters together. It makes a Hebrew word, Av, and that expresses the essence of what's going on. The essence of an Av, the essence of a father, is to be able to create more from that one original beginning, from that one original source. You don't get that same message from the English word father or from the English word mother. You just don't get that same essence as you do with the Hebrew word av. And if you were to flip those two letters, okay, where we're saying that Hebrew expressing the essence of something, so we scramble those letters, we flip those letters, and now we have the word bo, which means to come here. So what is happening when someone is coming, when someone is bringing, when someone is gathering, right? You're taking disparate elements, you're taking the bet, you're taking the multiplicity, and you're drawing them close to the one, to the source, to the center. So the essence of the word bo, in its very definition, in its very essence, is taking bet into aleph, taking multiple things into one. That is the essence of what you're doing when you are drawing something near, when you are coming towards a particular source. I hope I'm being clear with what I'm talking about. So that's how Hebrew works. If that is how Hebrew works, then we have to understand then what do bracha and bechorah have in common. Okay, if that's not clear, then just stick your hand up and say, Rabbi Nick, you're talking nonsense, because it is quite an important point. We are trying to express and we're trying to say that the function of the way that Hebrew letters combine together, it's not by accident and it's not by chance. There is a very deep understanding, and there's very deep lessons that you could learn from any single Hebrew word. Like we've talked about examples of this in the past. We've talked about shame, a name, and sham, there, a destination, shamayim. We've talked about different examples where roots of Hebrew words, when they are shared, when they are common, you see a pattern emerging about what they are meaning. So this example is just one example. We don't have to get bogged down in it, but it's a very interesting example that you can just take these two letters and learn so much. Aleph into bet means that you are producing, and that is the function of the father. Bet into aleph denotes gathering, and that's why the Hebrew word for coming is bo. Okay, so if we have a look at bechorah and beracha, we can start to understand what they have in common. So if we take those letters of bet, chaf, and reish, whether it spells bechor or whether it spells barech, there's a very interesting pattern that emerges. For those of you who aren't familiar, every Hebrew letter has a numerical value. An aleph is worth 1. A bet is worth 2. Gimel 3, etc., etc. You can see how it all adds up. So if I wanted to work out the gematria of my name, the numerical value of my name, I would say it's Yud for 10, Tzadik for 90, that's 100, Chet makes it 108, and Kuf makes it 208. So the Hebrew name Yitzchak has a gematria of 208. If my name was Gad, then it would be the letter Gimel, which is 3, the letter Daled, which is 7. Add them together, I get 7. Daled 4, then added them together, it gets 7. If we have a look at the letters that make up the word Barech or Bechor, the Bet is 2, the Chaf is 20, and the Reish is 200. What do we notice about that pattern?
It's 2022.
2022.
222.
222, very good. But the specific letters are all connected to the number 2. There is something very 2-oriented about these two words. The bet has a numerical value of 2. The chaf has a numerical value of 20. And the reish has a numerical value of 200. So these are all connected to the concept of 2. If you remember when we talked about the bet a few minutes ago, we said that 2 was about multiplicity. We said 2 was about having something more than there was before, right? And if you then have 2 and 20 and 200, that's still going to be linked to the concept of there being more than there was before, but it's escalating. It's escalating in quite significant steps. The 2, the 20, the 200. So all of the foundational building blocks of these two words, Bechorah or Bechor, and Bracha or Barech, the roots of those two words, the foundational building blocks are linked to the number 2 in various ways. Right? 2 is all about things being in addition to, multiplicity, bringing out more, adding on, things having more than there was before. Right? So what does a blessing mean? Very little. Right? But what does a bracha mean? Well, now we can understand a little more about what the essence of a bracha actually means. A bracha, right, means to increase. It means more coming to fruition. Okay? If we take a look at a very familiar passage from Tehillim, which we read in Hallel, Hashem Zecharanu Yevarech, Yevarech et Beit Yisrael, Yevarech et Beit Aharon. Right? Hashem is blessing all of these different entities. He is blessing the house of Israel. He is blessing the house of Aaron. He is blessing those who fear Hashem. Haktanim im hagdolim, the small as well as the great. What is the next word? Yevarech yirei Hashem, haktanim im hagdolim. Yosef Hashem aleichem, aleichem v'yabaneh. May Hashem increase upon you and upon your children. Baruchim atem la Hashem. You are blessed of Hashem, maker of heaven and earth. So we see in Hallel, we ask for all of these things to be yevarech, to be blessed. And the next thing that we see is hosafah. The next thing that we see is addition. King David defines what bracha means. The definition of bracha is addition. Yeah? And when you see that increase, then it is defined as Baruchim Atem Lashem. Now you are blessed. And if you take a look at every time bracha is mentioned in Chumash, it's always linked to an increase. It's always linked to there being more of something, more children, etc., whatever it might be. Says Rashi in the Gemara in Sota, he says, Bameh berchu, with what was he blessed? And this is in reference to a particular piece of Gemara, but what we need is the nugget that Rashi extracts. Kol bracha shebamikra, any mention of the word bracha in the Torah, lashon ribui hu. It denotes a language of increase, of plurality. It denotes plurality. It is a thing that multiplies. Yeah? So that is bracha. Something increases, something grows, something gets bigger and greater. That is bracha. So what is bechorah? What is bechorah? So a bechorah, along the lines of what we were talking about with the Av, a bechor, a firstborn, is what makes a person a father. They were not a father before that bechor. Now they are a father. A second child doesn't do that. It's the first child that does that. It turns this individual into something more than he was before. He was not an Av. He was not a father before he gave birth to his firstborn child. He only became a father when his first child was born. So the first time a person starts to increase their existence in the form of offspring, that is expressed through the Bechor. They become an Av. They become an Aleph going into a Bet. And that happens through the Bechor. So that is our connection between the Bechor and the Bracha. They both denote multiplicity, whether it's multiplicity of the person's nature changing into an Av as opposed to just being an individual beforehand, whether it's Bracha, which indicates the sprouting of of increase, that is the connection. That is what these two words have very much in common. So going back to our process of selection, why are we selecting anything? Where is this all going? What's the purpose of it all? The answer is we are trying to determine who is going to be the carrier of bracha in this world. That is the fundamental question, the fundamental challenge of Sefer Bereshit. Yeah? The true start, as it were, where we see this. The moment that we meet the pearl in the sand, taking us all the way back to Parashat Lech Lecha, Vayomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha me'aretzecha mimoladetecha mibeit avicha el haaretz asher eka. The first instruction from the Almighty to Avram, go, leave everything behind you. Why? Ve'esecha legoy gadol, I will make you into a great nation. Va'avarechecha, and I will bless you. Va'agadla shemecha, and I will make your name great. V'heye bracha, and you will be a bracha. You will be the embodiment of bracha. It's amazing when you start to look at these same verses through a different set of lenses after so many weeks and so many months of exploring all of these different things. It's amazing. V'avarcha mevarechecha, mevarchecha mekalelcha, or v'nivrachu v'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. V'nivrachu v'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama. All the families of the earth shall be blessed through you. We are the bearers of bracha. Yaakov creates that 71st nation who will be the source of bracha for the entire world. Yeah? And even in Klal Yisrael, it becomes more refined because the bracha travels through the tribe of Levi. It travels into the Kohanim, right? The bearers of the bracha, Birkat Kohanim. It gets more and more refined even within our nation itself. But the point is that the world will be able to increase and develop and reach its ultimate destination in history through you, through the Jewish people, as you begin to put together the 71st nation, which will help mankind to get to the end of days correctly and reach a world of tikkun, which is the ultimate state of bracha. That's all done through Avraham and his descendants. It brings Hashem into the world. You know, when we say a bracha, we say Baruch Atah Hashem. Hashem, who is infinite, is the source of all bracha. You, God, are the source of everything. Everything comes through you. Shehakol nihiyeh bidvaro. Everything comes on account of your word. Everything. You are the infinite source of everything. A breicha is a wellspring, right? The water gushes forth. This word bracha is an expression of everything coming out, everything coming into fruition, everything sprouting, and it all sprouts from Hashem. So Avraham passes the bechorah and the beracha, the firstborn privilege and the bracha and the blessing to Yitzchak. And now there is the question of who's going to receive it next. And that is the struggle of this parasha. And it's also the struggle, the fundamental question of the whole Sefer Bereshit. That's everything that we're contending with. Everything that we've been challenged with is all about this bracha and bechorah, the things which identify our nation as being the source of bracha in this world. Who is it going through? Who are we sifting away in the process? And that's the entirety of the book of Bereshit. Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff, guys. Any questions or comments before we wrap things up? Keep us on track though, Lawrence.
I do have a small question. It may not quite be as relevant to what you've been saying, but when we mention the descendants of Ishmael and we mention the descendants later on of Esau,
yeah,
the descendants of Ishmael were princes, but the descendants of Esau are named as chiefs. Why? What's the difference there? Why weren't they princes?
I don't know an answer off the top of my head. I'd have to look into it, but it doesn't play directly into into this particular flow of the narrative. But it's a good question and a good observation.
And then our 12 brothers are not described as chiefs or princes either.
No, they're called Shvatim.
We're not, and neither are our patriarchs. Well, Abraham was known as a king, a melech, but nobody else really was known as a king, were they?
Right. Where was Abraham called a king?
I thought, well, when he's talking with the other kings, they call him the king.
Oh.
Especially when he's debating the cave of Machpelah.
You're a very observant Jew, must say. I'll have to look into that.
But not the way you think.
But no, it doesn't. We don't have to answer that question at this very, very point, but we do need to look into that. Okay, so fine. So let's finish up as follows, guys. If Toldot is one more stage in the selection process of Sefer Bereshit, then we're going to need to understand about what is unique about the particular selection between Yaakov and Esav that is different from all of the other selections that we've had until now. Because so far, we've had selections from people who are linked or people who shared a father, but this is the first time that we have two individuals who share the same parents. Not only that, they even shared the same womb. You can't get much closer than that. So why does this selection have to take place between two people who are so similar? The struggle of the bracha, the struggle of the bechorah, it takes place between two brothers. Not only that, but two twins who shared the same womb. So we need to understand why that has to happen, right? And we have to appreciate that this is the final selection in the context of Sefer Bereshit. So why does the final selection have to be between two individuals who are more similar than anyone who has come before them? And the answers to this question will touch on the most delicate, complex, and important issues that are relevant in our own struggles, even in this day and age. But to understand more, you'll have to come back next week. And that's all we've got time for, folks. So come and join us on Zoom for the after party. But to all those watching on Facebook and on YouTube, thank you for learning with us, and we'll see you again next week. Bye for now.